Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is $3 Theater, and the Fate of the Furious comes out in like 2 weeks, and man, I am excited. I cannot wait to fucking see it. I've been a fan of the franchise since it opened in July 2001. It was July 2001 when that movie came out, and I lived in San Diego at the time, and that was where the biggest street racing scene in the country was. I'm talking like every weekend you would have at least 500 cars that would be driving around the San Diego area trying to find places to race. And it only got more popular once the Fast and the Furious came out. It was a crazy situation to say the very least, albeit really kind of boring because there were so many cars that were trying to race. The cops knew where everyone was going, and so they'd always bust them first. But anyway, I digress. So the Fate of the Furious comes out in 2 weeks. It's the 8th iteration in this franchise, and it's the first one entirely post Paul Walker, which means it has an extremely large amount of shoes to fill. It does. It has to fill those shoes, fill that loss, the hole from him being gone. And based on what I've seen from the trailer, yeah, it looks like it does that. There were early reactions that came out last night from CinemaCon, which basically said it's as batshit crazy as you think, but it's still a lot of fun. And that's, I think, quite frankly, what a lot of people want. They want the over-the-top craziness that comes from these movies. And they all share one central theme, and they have since the beginning, and that is family. The only one that I think really kind of shunned away from that perspective, at least to the max, was the most, was Too Fast, Too Furious. But even then, you had Paul Walker and Tyrese Gibson, and they had their relationship, which was also kind of like the family aspect. And then that's also where Ludacris came into the mix. So then that kind of added into Fast and Furious 5 when they brought everyone back for that. Like, the thing is, like, I'm a huge fan of the franchise is basically all I need to say about that. But at CinemaCon, right before they showed a surprise screening of the movie, Vin Diesel came out and he made a couple comments about it. He says here, when talking about the growth of the audience, it's like, somehow you managed to increase our audience. That makes us want to go to work. That gives us a certain pride in our work. I remember being here 2 years ago and talking about Fast and Furious 7 for the first time, telling you there was going to be F8, the Fate of the Furious. Then he goes on to say, as the world sees this movie, they'll see how this is the beginning of the next trilogy. And there were characters who were brought into Furious 7, like Kurt Russell, who were brought in specifically for this new trilogy. And that, again, is the interesting discussion here, right? It's like the 8th movie in the franchise is kicking off a new trilogy that is effectively going to end with Fast and Furious 10, which should bring the franchise home, at least until Universal inevitably does a reboot 10 years down the road or some such shit, in order to capitalize on the franchise once again. I don't know what to expect from this. If you look at the events of Fast and Furious and what led up to where they are now. Okay, so the first movie was essentially Point Break, but instead of, people who are like extreme stunters or extreme sporters or whatever, these guys are gearheads who rob, trucks and shit. Okay, cool. Then you get Too Fast, Too Furious, which is nothing really to do with the same concept, but it's like racers in Miami trying to stop a drug lord. Okay, fine. Tokyo Drift. Story about a military brat going to Japan and learning how to drift, but then again meeting Han and developing that bond with Han and everything else. And so that is one of those moments where you're like, okay, there's the family aspect there, but it was meant to be a huge departure. Then you had Fast and Furious, which was everyone coming back to stop a drug lord from bringing in drugs from Mexico to the United States. Then, of course, number 5, everyone's on the run. And then they end up in Brazil and they rob a dude for like a shitload of fucking money. Then you have number 6, which is taking on, now it gets into like more of like the Bond-esque, because, in the 5th movie, bringing in Hobbs's character, the Rock, then that comes into the 6th movie where, now the Rock needs them, goes to them in order to be a team to take down Shaw. And then the 7th movie where they defeat Shaw, but then Shaw's brother's pissed off and then he's going after them. And everything else. is also the you know, the fun little aspect of it. And then this one, I don't even fucking know it. There's Cypher, Charlize Theron's character, who's going to be doing what looks like a lot of hacking, which is that the New York car chase scene should be pretty fucking insane as a result of that. So I'm very curious to see what happens with this. But as you can see, it gets progressively bigger and crazier and zanier and over the top. I mean, you know, look at the trailer for Fate of the Furious. The Rock kicks a torpedo into another car. Like, it's just going to be a lot of fun. So looking at the idea of a Fast and Furious trilogy, of a final Fast and Furious trilogy, does make sense. Like I said, post Paul Walker, that is what they have to do. There have been talks from what I've heard about them, like maybe CGing Paul Walker in, using his brother once again to be like the body double for him. I don't like that idea. Let him go. Let them go. Move on. Because now it's moving into this world of like cyber terrorism and you know, like very much James Bond type stuff. And it's curious. I'll be curious to see where it goes with the final trilogy. We'll know more once it comes out in a couple weeks. We'll know more once that's all good. But in the meantime, this is one of my favorite franchises. So whatever they do, I'm going to see. Like opening weekend, I'm going to see. And I'm going to enjoy the shit out of it because they're good movies. They're dumb and they're fun. But a new trilogy of Fast and Furious films makes me excited because it's allowing them to just, you know, they've built up to the point of just going all out crazy. And since they keep one-upping each other every single movie and they keep bringing in directors that are actually doing like a pretty good job, I definitely want, you know, I definitely want them to continue pushing that envelope. And again, keeping with the core central theme, which is why people keep coming back, is family. And, you know, and you could argue that over the course of the past 16 years this franchise has been around, it's almost like they are family to an extent, which is one of the reasons why it's like going home again. It's like a you know, a blanket, familiar feel. It just feels good because even though the stories keep getting bigger and getting crazier, they feel like they stay the same. And that's good. The only downside of that, though, and I'll end it with this, the only downside of that is I read a report from the Fate of the Furious screenings that said that they probably couldn't tell one particular scene where Vin Diesel and The Rock were in the same shot together. They're in scenes together, but there was stuff that, you know, there was reports of beef on set from between the two of them and everything else. So we haven't, you know, a lot of us thought that it was like a you know, kind of a publicity stunt sort of thing. But if that's true and they're never actually in a scene together, then that would really kind of show you the tensions on set, which sucks because for a franchise that's all about family, you figure they would, you know, work hard behind the scenes to make it work. So hopefully this doesn't cause a huge division going forward. I don't think it will. I think people enjoy working on the movies and they genuinely like each other. But, you know, the brothers fight and hopefully they'll get over it sooner rather than later. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? Is this something you're looking forward to? Am I just a huge nerd for Fast and the Furious? What do you guys think about it? Let me know in the comments below. My name, of course, is Matt Jarbo. You've been listening to 3 Buck Theater. And be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a great day. Peace out.